In a limestone cave in the Dordogne region of France, archaeologists made a discovery that challenges everything we thought we knew about our ancestors. Here, in the flickering shadows where firelight once danced on stone walls, they found the remains of a child who lived 30,000 years ago. But this wasn't just any skeletal fragment. This child's femur showed clear evidence of a break that had healed, perfectly aligned, without infection, in an age before antibiotics, before surgery, before what we would call medicine. Consider for a moment what this means. A broken femur in the wild is a death sentence for most creatures. Unable to hunt, unable to flee, the injured animal becomes prey or starves. Yet here was proof that someone, perhaps a parent, perhaps an entire clan, had carried this child through weeks of vulnerability. Someone had set the bone. Someone had brought food and water. Someone had believed in the possibility of healing when logic said there was none. This is where our story begins. Not in gleaming laboratories or medical schools, but in the darkness of prehistory, with the first glimmer of a question that would haunt humanity forever. Why do we heal? The human body performs miracles every second that we take entirely for granted. Right now, as you listen to these words, approximately 50 million of your cells have died and been replaced. 50 million tiny resurrections, happening without your conscious thought or effort. Your blood is completing another circuit through 96,000 kilometers of vessels, a journey that would circle the Earth twice. Somewhere in your body, a white blood cell is recognizing an invader it has never seen before and creating the precise antibody to destroy it. These are mysteries so profound that even naming them feels like trying to capture lightning in a jar. Our ancestors knew nothing of cells or antibodies, yet they witnessed the same phenomena we do. They watched wounds close, fevers break, and broken bones mend. They saw some people recover from injuries that killed others, and in their wonder, they began humanity's longest quest, the search to understand why. Travel back 40,000 years, before agriculture, before written language, before civilization as we know it. Picture a small band of humans, perhaps 30 souls, moving through a landscape we would barely recognize. The Ice Age grips the earth. Mammoths thunder across frozen plains. Cave bears contest every shelter. Death lurks in 1,000 forms: cold, hunger, predation, infection. Yet somehow, improbably, our ancestors not only survived but learned to heal. The evidence surrounds us if we know where to look. In Israel, archaeologists discovered the grave of a man from 12,000 years ago, buried with his hand resting on a puppy. But this wasn't just companionship crossing into the afterlife. The man's skeleton showed signs of a congenital disease that would have left him unable to walk. He lived to around 50 years old, an impressive age for the time, meaning his community had cared for him for decades. The puppy? Analysis suggests it died naturally and was placed with him, perhaps as a healing companion for the next world. What compelled these ancient people to care for those who couldn't contribute to the hunt? What made them believe healing was possible when everything in their harsh world suggested otherwise? The answer lies in something uniquely human, the ability to imagine a different future, to see beyond the present injury to possible recovery. In caves across Europe, we find the first medicine kits, not the sterile packages we know, but collections that speak of deep observation and experimentation. Willow bark, which contains the precursor to aspirin. Foxglove, later refined into heart medication. Poppy seeds, nature's painkiller. How did they know? Trial and error alone seems insufficient. Thousands of plants surrounded them, many poisonous, yet somehow they found the ones that heal. The Neanderthals, those cousins we once dismissed as brutish, left us clues about prehistoric medicine that reshape our understanding. In Shanidar Cave in Iraq, a Neanderthal burial from 60,000 years ago revealed something extraordinary. The skeleton of a man who had survived multiple injuries, including a crushed eye socket and withered arm, was surrounded by pollen from medicinal plants: yarrow, cornflower, thistle. These weren't food plants, they were medicine. Someone had gathered healing flowers for the dead, suggesting they had used them for the living. But here's where the mystery deepens. Modern analysis shows these exact plants contain compounds that reduce inflammation, fight infection, and ease pain. The same active ingredients our pharmaceutical companies synthesize today were being used before our species had even developed language sophisticated enough to explain why they worked. The healers knew without knowing how they work. Imagine being that first healer, that brave soul who decided to chew bitter willow bark and discovered their headache faded. Picture the one who first noticed that spiderwebs stopped bleeding, or that certain clays drew poison from wounds. They were scientists before science existed, experimenting with their own bodies and the bodies of those they loved. Every remedy was bought with risk, every cure shadowed by the memory of failures. The shamans emerged from this tradition, part healer, part mystic, part proto-scientist. In Siberia, archaeologists have found ritual items dating back 24,000 years that match exactly the tools used by shamans today. An unbroken tradition of healing that predates agriculture, metallurgy, and written language. These healers didn't just treat the body. They recognized something modern medicine is only beginning to rediscover. That healing involves more than physical repair. Watch a modern Siberian shaman at work, and you witness techniques refined over millennia. The drumming that alters consciousness, shifting brainwaves into states where pain diminishes and healing accelerates. The visualization journeys that we now know activate the same neural pathways as actual experience. The community rituals that trigger what we call the placebo effect, but which might better be named the belief effect, the profound ability of the mind to initiate healing in the body. In China, something remarkable was happening. 5,000 years ago, healers began mapping invisible pathways through the body. Meridians along which they claimed life energy flowed. They inserted thin needles at precise points, adjusting what they couldn't see or measure. Modern science scoffed for centuries. How could needles in your ear affect your liver? Where were these meridians in our anatomy textbooks? Then functional MRI scanners revealed the impossible. Acupuncture points correspond to areas of decreased electrical resistance in the skin. The needles trigger specific regions of the brain associated with the organs classical Chinese medicine claimed they affected. The meridians might not appear in dissection, but something real flows along those ancient maps. We can measure the effects without fully understanding the cause, a mystery wrapped in 5,000 years of successful treatment. Consider what this means. Without technology, without modern instruments, ancient Chinese healers detected patterns in the body so subtle that we needed million-dollar machines to confirm them. They felt with their fingers what our instruments strained to detect. How? What sense did they possess that we've perhaps lost in our reliance on technology? The Egyptians pushed the mystery deeper. 4,000 years ago, they performed surgeries we would consider sophisticated today. The Edwin Smith Papyrus, a medical text from 3,600 years ago, describes 48 cases of trauma surgery with a systematic approach that wouldn't seem out of place in a modern textbook. They identified the brain as the seat of consciousness, 1,500 years before the Greeks. They performed cataract surgery, set bones, and even attempted tumor removal. But alongside these proto-scientific approaches, they practiced healing that defies our categories. Healers would spend the night in temples, dreaming of cures for their patients. They used incantations not as primitive superstition, but as what we might now call focused intention. They recognized that healing required more than mechanical repair. It needed the alignment of forces we still struggle to name. Here's what haunts me about these ancient healers. They achieved results. Not perfect results, not every time, but often enough that their practices survived and spread. A useless treatment disappears within a generation, a harmful one even faster. Yet acupuncture, herbalism, and energy healing have persisted for millennia. Either billions of people across thousands of years have been consistently fooled, or these ancient healers discovered something real that our modern instruments still can't fully capture. In the Amazon rainforest, tribes developed pharmacology that makes our random drug discovery look primitive. The Takini people create a hunting poison from tree bark that paralyzes prey but leaves the meat safe to eat. When pharmaceutical companies analyzed it, they found a muscle relaxant now used in surgery. But here's the astounding part. Creating this poison requires combining plants in a specific order at specific temperatures, processes that would denature the compounds if done differently. The chances of discovering this by random experimentation are essentially zero. When asked how they knew, the shamans gave an answer that would make any scientist uncomfortable. The plants told them. In ayahuasca ceremonies, they claimed to commune with the spirit of the forest, receiving direct transmission of healing knowledge. Dismiss it as hallucination, if you will, but explain how hallucinations consistently reveal molecular structures and preparation methods that work. The Aboriginal Australians offer perhaps the deepest mystery. For 60,000 years, the longest continuous culture on Earth has practiced healing through what they call the dream time. Healers enter altered states where they claim to see the true cause of illness. Not just physical symptoms, but disruptions in what they term the patient's dreaming. They sing healing songs passed down for thousands of generations, songs that must be performed precisely, where changing a single note negates the healing power. Modern studies of Aboriginal healing songs show they often use frequencies that promote cellular repair. The rhythm patterns match those that induce meditative states. The breathing required to perform them alkalizes the blood. But these correlations feel like explaining a symphony by analyzing sound waves. True, but missing the essence. What did these ancient healers know that we've forgotten? They worked without germ theory, yet prevented infections. They lacked anatomy textbooks, yet reset bones. They had no concept of neurotransmitters, yet altered consciousness in ways that promoted healing. They achieved results that modern medicine, with all its technology, sometimes cannot match. Perhaps most mysteriously, they seem to understand something about the relationship between healer and patient that we've lost in our sterile clinical environments. The Aboriginal notion of singing someone well, the Chinese concept of qi between doctor and patient, the shamanic journey taken on behalf of the sick, all speak to healing as a relationship, not just a procedure. As we stand at the threshold of modern medicine's greatest triumphs and most humbling failures, these ancient mysteries call to us. In our rush to reduce healing to chemistry and physics, have we overlooked essential elements that can't be measured in test tubes? When we separated the healer from the priest, the body from the spirit, the individual from the community, did we gain precision but lose something profound? The child in that French cave, whose broken femur healed 30,000 years ago, poses questions we still cannot answer. Someone splinted that leg with knowledge they couldn't explain. Someone believed healing was possible when everything argued otherwise. Someone cared enough to make it happen. That same mystery, why we heal, how we heal, what makes healing possible, echoes through every era of human history. From prehistoric caves to Egyptian temples, from Chinese meridians to Amazonian plant spirits, our ancestors began a quest that continues today. They lit the first torch in humanity's exploration of healing, a flame we still carry as we venture deeper into mysteries that grow more profound the more we discover. The seeds of ancient mystery weren't just questions, they were invitations. Invitations to explore the most fundamental aspect of life, its astonishing ability to repair, restore, and regenerate. Our ancestors accepted that invitation with tools we would consider primitive, but with wisdom we're only beginning to rediscover. As we prepare to journey deeper into this story, to watch how these ancient mysteries evolved and expanded, remember that child's healed bone. It reminds us that healing has always been part miracle, part mystery, part human determination to make the impossible possible. The quest that began in firelight continues in the glow of computer screens and laboratory lights, but the essential questions remain unchanged. Why do we heal? How do we heal? And perhaps most mysteriously of all, what invisible forces connect the healer's intention with the patient's recovery? The answers, as our ancestors knew, and as we're rediscovering, lie not just in the physical world we can measure, but in realms we're only beginning to imagine. The year is 1674. In the Dutch city of Delft, a cloth merchant named Antony van Leeuwenhoek holds his breath as he peers through a tiny glass bead. He has ground this lens himself, achieving magnifications that the scientific establishment claimed impossible. What he sees in that moment will shatter humanity's understanding of healing forever. Swimming before his eyes are creatures no human has ever witnessed. What he calls animalcules, living things in a drop of pond water that dance and swirl with purposeful motion. But Van Leeuwenhoek doesn't stop there. With the curiosity that marks true discovery, he examines everything. A scraping from his teeth reveals a universe of organisms living in his own mouth. A drop of blood shows disc-shaped cells tumbling past. And then, in an infected wound, he watches something extraordinary. White cells pursuing and consuming smaller organisms, like wolves hunting prey, at a scale impossibly small. He is witnessing the ancient war of healing, the battle between body and invader that has raged since life began. But here's what haunts me about this moment. Van Leeuwenhoek has discovered the mechanism behind what shamans and healers have known for millennia, the evil spirits they spoke of driving from wounds. They swim before his lens, the body's ability to fight unseen enemies. He watches it happen in real time. Consider what this means. For thousands of years, healers had been fighting an enemy they couldn't see, developing treatments for organisms they couldn't prove existed. Yet somehow, impossibly, many of their remedies worked. The intersection of ancient wisdom and new science was about to create explosions of understanding and even deeper mysteries. 40 years before Van Leeuwenhoek's revelation, something strange was happening in the maternity wards of Europe. Midwives, those ancient practitioners of birth wisdom, consistently lost fewer mothers to childbed fever than university-trained doctors. The physicians, proud of their learning, dismissed this as coincidence or claimed midwives simply handled easier cases. But the numbers persisted, decade after decade. Traditional healers were saving lives that modern medicine couldn't. The answer wouldn't come for another 2 centuries, when a Hungarian physician named Ignaz Semmelweis noticed something that shouldn't have mattered. Doctors often came to deliver babies directly from autopsy rooms, while midwives had no such practice. On a hunch that defied all medical theory of the time, Semmelweis insisted doctors wash their hands in chlorinated lime water. The death rate plummeted from 18% to less than 1%. But here's the tragedy that reveals how mystery and medicine intertwine. Semmelweis couldn't explain why it worked. Germ theory wouldn't exist for decades. His colleagues, unable to understand the mechanism, rejected the evidence before their eyes. Semmelweis died in an asylum, driven mad by watching preventable deaths continue. The midwives, meanwhile, kept their traditional cleansing rituals, their blessing waters, their purification ceremonies. They saved lives without knowing why, just as they always had. This pattern repeats throughout history with haunting regularity. Traditional knowledge achieves results. Science eventually discovers the mechanism. But in between lies a twilight zone where healing happens for reasons we can't explain, where what works defies what we know. Travel with me to 1796, to a small English town where Edward Jenner is about to perform an experiment that should have been impossible. Local milkmaids claim that catching cowpox protects against smallpox, a piece of folklore that makes no scientific sense. Different diseases can't protect against each other. Every physician knows this. But Jenner has noticed something the textbooks can't explain. The milkmaids are right. Their smooth, unpocked faces testify to immunity the learned doctors don't possess. So he does. Something that would horrify modern ethics committees. He deliberately infects a young boy with cowpox, then exposes him to smallpox. The boy survives. Vaccination is born. Think about the audacity of this moment. Jenner is manipulating immune responses he can't see, using principles he doesn't understand, based on folk wisdom that contradicts established science. He's practicing magic that happens to work. Only later will we discover antibodies, antigens, immune memory, the vocabulary to describe what milkmaids knew through observation and tradition. The age of exploration brings treasures more valuable than gold. It brings healing traditions that shatter Western certainties. In Peru, conquistadors watch indigenous healers treat malaria with bark from the cinchona tree. The Spanish priests, torn between dismissing it as heathen practice and desperately needing treatment for their dying missionaries, choose pragmatism. They bring the bark back to Europe, where it saves lives, across the continent. But the indigenous healers use it differently than European doctors. They combine it with other plants, perform ceremonies, time the treatment by lunar cycles. European physicians strip away these superstitions, isolating the active ingredient we call quinine. The purified drug works, but not as well as the traditional preparation. Something in the ceremony, the combination, the timing, adds efficacy we can't measure. This phenomenon, traditional treatments working better than their isolated components, appears everywhere we look. Willow bark tea treats pain and inflammation more gently than pure aspirin. The whole herb preparations of traditional Chinese medicine often show fewer side effects than extracted compounds. It's as if the ancient healers understood synergies our reductionist science struggles to grasp. In the salons of 18th century Paris and Vienna, something extraordinary is happening. Franz Anton Mesmer, a German physician, claims to manipulate invisible magnetic fluids that flow through all living things. His patients sit around tubs of magnetized water, holding iron rods, falling into trances where chronic pain vanishes, hysterical blindness clears, and conditions deemed incurable resolve. The French Academy of Sciences investigates, concluding there is no magnetic fluid. Mesmer is a charlatan. Case closed, except the patients keep healing. The blindness stays cured. The pain doesn't return. The Academy, faced with results that contradict their findings, declares it imagination. But what kind of imagination repairs tissue, restores sight, eliminates tumors? We now know Mesmer had discovered hypnosis, the profound ability of focused consciousness to alter physical reality. Modern brain scans show hypnotized patients' brains responding to suggested reality as if it were physical truth. Tell them under hypnosis that they're being burned and their skin may blister. Tell them their pain is fading and neural. Pain signals actually diminish. Mesmer was wrong about the mechanism but right about the phenomenon. Consciousness can directly influence healing in ways that make the boundary between mind and body meaningless. Meanwhile, in Germany, Samuel Hahnemann is developing homeopathy based on a principle that shouldn't work, like cures like dilute a substance that causes symptoms until not a single molecule remains, and somehow it treats those same symptoms. Scientific impossibility. Mathematical absurdity. Yet across Europe, homeopathic hospitals report recovery rates matching or exceeding conventional medicine. Modern science points to the placebo effect, as if naming it explains it away. But the placebo effect itself is perhaps the greatest medical mystery we face. Sugar pills triggering endorphin release, fake surgeries healing real damage, saline injections reversing Parkinson's symptoms. The mind healing the body through belief alone represents magic as profound as any shaman's. Ritual. In the Amazon, an even deeper mystery unfolds. Western botanists arrive convinced they'll catalogue medicinal plants through systematic testing. They calculate it would take thousands of years to test every combination of the rainforest's 80,000 plant species. Yet local healers have already identified specific preparations for specific conditions. Compounds Western chemistry confirms as optimal. When asked how they knew which plants to combine, in what proportions, prepared by what method, the shamans give that unsettling answer. The plants told them. In ayahuasca ceremonies, they claim to enter communion with plant consciousness, receiving direct transmission of molecular knowledge. Hallucination, says Western science. Then explain how hallucinations consistently reveal verifiable chemical information. The shamans describe seeing the molecular structure of compounds, understanding how they'll interact with human physiology, perceiving the optimal harvesting times, when active ingredients peak. PhDs in biochemistry spend decades discovering what illiterate healers claim the forest teaches directly. Either these shamans are the luckiest guessers in history, or consciousness can access information through channels our science hasn't mapped. Back in Europe, the microscope keeps revealing new mysteries. Scientists discover bacteria, then viruses, then prions, each smaller than the last, each requiring new theories to explain. But traditional healers have been treating invisible infections all along. Chinese medicine speaks of external pathogens that invade the body. Ayurveda describes subtle toxins that accumulate in tissues. Native American traditions tell of bad spirits that enter through wounds. Are these just primitive metaphors for germs? Perhaps, but their treatments often work through mechanisms beyond killing pathogens. Traditional Chinese herbs don't just have antibiotic properties, they modulate immune responses, reduce inflammation, and promote tissue repair through pathways. Pharmaceutical science is still mapping. The healers treated the whole system while we were still looking for single causes. In India, yogis demonstrate control over autonomic functions Western medicine considers impossible. They slow their heartbeats to near-death levels, surviving buried underground for hours. They pierce their bodies without bleeding, heal wounds in days that should take weeks. British colonial doctors document these feats, unable to explain them, filing reports that read like fantasy but are witnessed by multiple observers. The yogis claim they're manipulating prana, life energy that flows through subtle channels called nadis. Nonsense, says anatomy. There are no nadis in dissection. But functional MRI now shows that advanced meditators can control brain regions considered involuntary. They can raise body temperature in specific areas, alter blood flow, and trigger healing responses through conscious intention. The nadis might not appear in textbooks, but something flows where the yogis say it does. This is the crux of where science met magic, not in opposition, but in a dance of discovery where each partner reveals truths the other cannot see. Science brings precision, repeatability, and mechanism. Magic, if we can call traditional healing arts by that name, brings holism, consciousness, and pathways of influence that material science struggles to map. In mesmerism, homeopathy, traditional herbalism, and energy medicine, we see the same pattern. Practices that work for reasons our current science can't fully explain. Rather than dismissing them, might we consider that healing operates through multiple channels, some material, some energetic, some consciousness-based, that require different languages to describe? As the 19th century dawns, we stand at a peculiar moment. We have microscopes revealing the mechanical basis of disease. We have ancient traditions achieving results through non-mechanical means. We have the placebo effect, demonstrating that belief alone can trigger healing. We have energy medicine working through pathways anatomy can't find. The wisest healers begin to suspect that medicine isn't discovering new truths so much as developing vocabulary for ancient wisdom. The evil spirits become bacteria. The vital force becomes the immune system. The healing trance becomes the psycho-neuro-immunological response. But something is always lost in translation, some aspect of the traditional practice that our mechanical metaphors can't capture. What if healing requires both approaches? What if the shamans and scientists, the mystics and microscopists, are mapping different aspects of the same territory? What if the intersection of science and magic isn't a historical curiosity, but a necessary synthesis for understanding how healing really works? As we prepare to venture deeper into the quantum age of medicine, where particles behave like waves and observation changes outcomes, remember Van Leeuwenhoek peering through his handmade lens. He saw the micro-world that validated ancient practices, but the healers knew it was there all along, fighting battles against invisible enemies with weapons science couldn't yet name. The meeting of science and magic in healing isn't over. If anything, it's just beginning. As we discover biophotons, quantum coherence in living systems, and the measurable effects of intention on biological processes, we're not leaving magic behind. We're developing the science to understand what the magicians knew all along, that healing engages forces both seen and unseen, measured and immeasurable, in a dance as old as life itself. Part 3. The Quantum Paradox of Recovery. Inside your body, at this very moment, 10 trillion chemical reactions are occurring. But these aren't the orderly processes your high school chemistry textbook described. At the scale of molecules and cells, the laws of physics become strange, almost magical. Particles exist in multiple states simultaneously. Information travels between cells faster than chemistry should allow. And perhaps most mysteriously, the very act of observing these processes seems to change their outcome. Welcome to the quantum realm of healing, where the impossible becomes inevitable. In 1923, Alexander Gurwitch made a discovery that should have revolutionized medicine. The Russian scientist noticed that onion roots, when placed near each other but not touching, influenced each other's growth. Separated by quartz glass, the effect continued. Separated by regular glass, it stopped. Something was passing between the roots, something that could penetrate quartz but not ordinary glass. That something was light. Not visible light, but ultra-weak photon emissions that living cells produce, what Gurwitch called mitogenetic radiation. His colleagues dismissed it as experimental error. How could cells emit light? Why would they communicate through photons? The idea was shelved for decades, too strange to fit the mechanical model of biology. But here's what makes my spine tingle. Gurwitch was right. Modern photomultipliers confirm that every living cell emits biophotons, coherent light at intensities 1,000 times weaker than what our eyes can see. These aren't random emissions. They're organized, carrying information between cells, coordinating growth, repair, and immune responses at the speed of light. Think about what this means. Your body is literally glowing, every cell a tiny star in a vast constellation of light. When you cut your finger, the injured cells broadcast photonic distress signals. Immune cells respond to light frequencies we're only beginning to decode. Healing involves not just chemical messages trudging through blood and lymph, but instantaneous light-speed communication that orchestrates recovery with precision no nervous system could achieve. Fritz Albert Popp, the German physicist who vindicated Gurwitch's work, discovered something even more unsettling. Cancer cells emit different photon patterns than healthy cells. They're chaotic, discordant, like an orchestra where every musician plays a different song. But when healing occurs, whether through chemotherapy, radiation, or spontaneous remission, the light coherence returns. The cells begin singing in harmony again. What conducts this cellular symphony? We don't know. But we can measure it, photograph it, and watch it change in real time as healing progresses. The body's light show reveals an information system beyond nerves and hormones, a quantum communication network that classical biology never imagined. Now, let's venture into even stranger territory, the placebo effect. For decades, medicine treated it as an embarrassing footnote, something to control for rather than understand. But in 1993, a study shattered our comfortable dismissal of belief as a healing force. J. Bruce Moseley, an orthopedic surgeon in Houston, performed an experiment that still sends ripples through medical philosophy. He took patients with severe knee osteoarthritis and divided them into 3 groups. 2 received actual arthroscopic surgery, either joint lavage or debridement. The 3rd received fake surgery. Moseley made incisions, moved instruments around, but did nothing therapeutic. The patients didn't know which group they were in. Here's the result that keeps me awake at night. All 3 groups improved equally. The fake surgery worked as well as the real surgery. Patients who received nothing but incisions and theatre walked better, experienced less pain, and showed improved joint function for years afterward. Their knees healed from operations that never happened. The implications spiral into vertigo. These weren't psychological improvements. The joint function measurably increased. The body repaired damage that surgery didn't address, triggered by the belief that healing had occurred. Consciousness reached into tissue and bone, reorganizing matter through expectation alone. Brain scans of placebo responses reveal the mechanism without explaining the mystery. When patients believe they're receiving morphine, their brains release actual endorphins. When they think they're getting anti-anxiety medication, GABA receptors activate. The brain becomes its own pharmacy, manufacturing the exact chemicals it expects to receive. But it goes deeper. Parkinson's patients given placebo show increased dopamine production, not just released from existing stores, but actually manufactured in greater quantities. Their neurons respond to imaginary medicine by producing real neurotransmitters. The boundary between mind and matter doesn't just blur, it disappears. Fabrizio Benedetti, the Italian neuroscientist who spent decades studying placebos, documented something that challenges our fundamental assumptions about reality. The placebo effect can be unconscious. Patients who don't believe they're improving still show biological changes if their unconscious mind expects healing. Whatever mechanism turns thought into flesh operates below our awareness, in realms where will and tissue interweave. Consider spontaneous remission, medicine's most uncomfortable miracle. Kirill Hirschberg and Mark Ian Barash documented over 3,000 cases of medically impossible recoveries. Stage 4 cancers vanishing, inoperable tumors disappearing, HIV viral loads dropping to undetectable without treatment. These aren't misdiagnoses or exaggerations. They're documented with before and after scans, biopsies, and blood work. The medical establishment calls them spontaneous, as if that explains anything. But when researchers interview these miracle patients, patterns emerge. Many report profound psychological shifts before recovery. Forgiveness of old wounds, discovery of life purpose, or deep spiritual experiences. Some describe feeling heat or tingling where tumors later vanished. Others report vivid dreams of healing before any physical evidence appeared. Are these just coincidences? The mind trying to make sense of random biological events? Perhaps. But quantum physics suggests another possibility. In the quantum realm, observation collapses probability waves into specific outcomes. Consciousness doesn't just observe reality, it participates in creating it. Might focused consciousness collapse probability waves of illness into outcomes of health? The observer effect in healing shows up in unexpected places. Patients in clinical trials who receive more attention from researchers improve more than those who get standard care, regardless of whether they're receiving real treatment or placebo. Surgery patients with views of nature heal faster than those facing brick walls. The simple act of being observed with caring attention accelerates recovery. In physics, we accept that observing a quantum system changes it. In healing, we're discovering the same principle scales up to human bodies. The quality of observation, caring versus clinical, hopeful versus pessimistic, influences biological outcomes in measurable ways. Water offers another quantum mystery in healing. Masaru Emoto's experiments with water crystals, while controversial, point towards something profound. Water exposed to different words, thoughts, or music freezes into different crystal patterns. Love and gratitude produce symmetric, beautiful crystals. Hate and fear create chaotic, fragmented structures. Dismiss it as pseudoscience, if you will, but consider, our bodies are 70% water. Every cell swims in structured water that behaves differently than bulk water. Gerald Pollack's research at the University of Washington shows that biological water forms liquid crystals, organizing into layers that exclude solutes and conduct energy like biological semiconductors. This structured water changes with our emotional states. Stress hormones alter water's molecular organization. Meditation shifts its crystalline patterns. The water in healing tissue shows different nuclear magnetic resonance signatures than water in damaged tissue. We're not just bags of water, we're liquid crystal beings whose very structure responds to consciousness. The quantum nature of smell adds another layer to healing's mysteries. Luca Turin's vibrational theory proposes that our noses detect molecular vibrations, not just shapes. We smell quantum signatures. This explains why molecules with identical shapes can smell different. While differently shaped molecules can smell identical, they vibrate at the same quantum frequencies. If our noses are quantum detectors, what else might be? Ancient healing traditions use specific incenses, essential oils, and flower essences. They claim these substances carry vibrational signatures that promote healing. Modern science dismissed this as primitive thinking. But if smell operates through quantum vibration, might healing fragrances work through mechanisms more subtle than chemistry? Biophotons return us to the deepest mystery. POP's research reveals that DNA is the primary source of biophoton emission. The double helix acts as a biological laser, storing light and releasing it in coherent pulses. But here's the astounding part. DNA's photon emissions respond to intention. Healers from various traditions, Reiki masters, Qigong practitioners, therapeutic touch nurses, all show the same phenomenon. During healing sessions, their biophoton emissions increase and synchronize with their patients. The healer and patient's light literally entrains, creating a shared photonic field. Measurement shows this isn't imagination. Photon detectors record the increased coherence. Glenn Ryan's experiments at the Institute of Heart Math push even further into the impossible. He had healers direct intention toward test tubes of DNA. The DNA responded by winding tighter or unwinding, depending on the intended outcome. Distance didn't matter. The effect worked from across the room or across the country. Somehow, conscious intention influenced genetic material through space. These aren't fringe findings. The U.S. military funded research into distant healing, finding statistical effects that, while small, consistently exceeded chance. Prayer studies show similar results. Distant intention affecting biological systems in ways that shouldn't be possible. The mechanism remains mysterious, but the measurements are real. Quantum entanglement offers a theoretical framework, if not a complete explanation. When particles interact, they become entangled, sharing states instantaneously, regardless of distance. Might biological systems exhibit similar entanglement? When healer and patient interact, do their quantum fields entangle, allowing information transfer that transcends classical physics? The heart's role in quantum healing deserves special attention. The HeartMath Institute discovered that heart rhythms become coherent during states of appreciation, love, and compassion. This coherence isn't just poetic, it's measurable electromagnetic harmony that influences every cell in the body. The heart's electromagnetic field extends several feet beyond the body, strong enough to be detected by magnetometers. When two people are in heart coherence together, mother and infant, lovers, healer, and patient, their heart rhythms synchronize. Their fields merge, creating shared electromagnetic spaces where information flows between bodies. Ancient traditions that speak of healing through the heart aren't using metaphor. They're describing measurable field effects. As we stand at the threshold of understanding healing's quantum nature, we face a paradox. The more precisely we measure, the stranger healing becomes. The deeper we probe, the more consciousness and matter interweave. The quantum realm doesn't explain away healing's mysteries. It reveals that mystery goes all the way down to reality's foundations. We're discovering that healing involves quantum coherence, biophoton communication, field effects, and consciousness-matter interactions that shatter the mechanical model of medicine. The body isn't a machine to be repaired, but a quantum symphony to be tuned. Disease isn't just broken parts, but discordant frequencies. Healing isn't just chemistry, but physics at its most fundamental level. The placebo effect transforms from embarrassment to revelation, proof that consciousness participates in creating biological reality. Spontaneous remission shifts from impossible to inevitable, the natural result when consciousness aligns with healing potential. Energy medicine moves from superstition to science, the manipulation of quantum fields that underlie all biological processes. As we prepare to explore today's impossible healings, remember that quantum physics hasn't explained the mysteries away. It's revealed that nature operates by principles far stranger than our ancestors imagined. In the quantum realm, consciousness and matter dance together, observer and observed merge, and healing becomes what it's perhaps always been, a participation in the fundamental creativity of the universe itself. In a children's hospital in Cincinnati, 8-year-old Lee Spivak faces what should be a permanent disfigurement. His finger has been severed at the tip, sliced off by the propeller of a model airplane. The bone is exposed. The nail bed is destroyed. Standard medical practice calls for cleaning the wound and accepting the loss. Fingers don't grow back. Everyone knows this. Except Lee's brother happens to be a surgeon who's been following regenerative medicine research. He suggests something that sounds like science fiction: powder made from pig bladder. The doctors are skeptical but agree to try. They sprinkle the powder on the severed fingertip and wait. What happens over the next 4 weeks defies everything we think we know about human limitations. The finger grows back, not just skin covering the wound, but the entire fingertip. Flesh, bone, nail, even the fingerprint. Perfect regeneration that shouldn't be possible in mammals. Yet here it is, documented with photographs, examined by astonished physicians, impossible to deny. This is happening right now, in our time, not in ancient history or distant laboratories, but in hospitals where children regrow body parts like salamanders. The powder, derived from pig bladder extracellular matrix, somehow convinces human cells to revert to their embryonic state, remembering how to build complete structures rather than just scar tissue. Think about what this means. Somewhere in our cells lies dormant the ability to regenerate lost parts. We haven't evolved this away. We've simply forgotten how to activate it. A powder from pig bladder whispers the reminder, and suddenly we're capable of miracles we thought belonged only to mythology. But regeneration is just the beginning of today's impossible healings. Let me take you to Tibet, to the Himalayan heights, where monks perform feats that make medical textbooks obsolete. Harvard researcher Herbert Benson documented Tibetan monks raising their body temperature through meditation alone, not by a degree or two, but by 17 degrees Fahrenheit. They sit naked in freezing caves, draped in wet sheets that they dry with body heat generated by thought. The meditation is called Ge Tummo, and brain scans reveal what should be impossible. The monks consciously control their autonomic nervous system, directing blood flow, metabolic rate, and heat production with the precision of a thermostat. They override the hypothalamus, that ancient brain region that's supposed to operate beyond conscious reach. Through focused intention, they transform their bodies into furnaces that burn without fuel. But here's what truly bends the mind. Novice monks can learn this in weeks. It's not a genetic gift or decades of training. It's a latent ability awakened by practice. We all possess the neural circuitry. We simply don't know how to use it. The monks demonstrate that the boundary between voluntary and involuntary, between mind and metabolism, is a cultural construction, not a biological law. Now, witness another impossibility, this time in American cardiac units. The mantra study, monitor and actualization of noetic training, sounds like it belongs in science fiction. Cardiac patients are prayed for by strangers thousands of miles away. The patients don't know they're being prayed for. They've never met the people praying. By every rational measure, distant prayer should have zero effect. The results make rationality stutter. Patients receiving distant prayer have 25% fewer cardiac complications. They need less medication, have shorter hospital stays, and experience fewer emergencies. The effect persists across different prayer traditions: Christian, Buddhist, Jewish, Islamic. Something about focused, compassionate intention, regardless of religious framework, influences biological outcomes across space. Mitchell Krukoff, the Duke cardiologist who led the study, faced a dilemma that epitomizes modern medicine's encounter with mystery. The data is solid. The statistics are significant. The methodology is rigorous. But the mechanism? It might as well be magic. How does intention from a stranger affect heart rhythms? What carrier wave transmits healing prayer? The measurements say it works. Physics says it's impossible. Both can't be true, yet somehow both are. In oncology wards worldwide, an even deeper mystery unfolds daily: spontaneous remission. The term itself is a medical shrug, acknowledging events that shouldn't happen. Stage 4 cancers vanishing without treatment. Inoperable tumors disappearing between scans. Metastases throughout the body suddenly gone, leaving oncologists to document miracles they can't explain. Cariel Hirschberg spent years collecting these cases, finding over 3,000 documented spontaneous remissions in medical literature. These aren't misdiagnoses or wishful thinking. They're confirmed with biopsies, scans, and blood work. The cancers were real. Their disappearance was real. The mechanism remains utterly mysterious. Kelly Turner, researching radical remissions, interviewed over 100 survivors. Their stories reveal patterns that challenge everything about how we treat cancer. Many drastically changed their diet, but not to any single regimen. Some went vegan, others paleo, others juice fasted. The common factor wasn't what they ate, but the conviction that diet would heal them. They took control of their healing with fierce determination. Almost all reported profound psychological shifts. They released old resentments, found meaning in illness, or experienced spiritual awakenings. They describe heat in their tumors before they shrank, dreams of healing before scans confirmed it, or sudden knowing that the cancer was gone. Are these causes or effects? The chronology suggests the mental shifts preceded the physical healing, but causation in complex systems resists simple arrows. The microbiome revolution reveals another realm of impossible influence. We're not individuals, but ecosystems. Our bodies home to trillions of bacteria that outnumber our human cells. These aren't just passengers, they're participants in every aspect of our physiology, including healing. Fecal transplants, CS, transplanting stool from healthy donors, cure C, difficile infections that antibiotics can't touch. But the effects ripple beyond infection. Recipients report changes in mood, food preferences, even personality traits. One woman received a transplant from an overweight donor and suddenly gained weight despite no dietary changes. Another developed new food cravings, matching her donor's preferences. We're discovering that gut bacteria produce neurotransmitters, influence immune responses, and even affect genetic expression. The bacteria in your intestines are literally changing your brain chemistry, your inflammation levels, your healing capacity. Traditional medicine's emphasis on gut health, dismissed for decades as primitive thinking, turns out to be sophisticated systems biology that we're only beginning to understand. But it gets stranger. The hospital microbiome itself influences healing. Patients in rooms with diverse bacterial populations recover faster than those in sterile environments. The fungi growing in hospital walls seem to communicate with patient microbiomes through mechanisms we can't identify. We've been trying to eliminate microbes when we should have been cultivating healing ecosystems. Bioelectricity emerges as another frontier where impossible becomes routine. Every cell maintains electrical potential across its membrane. Wounds generate electrical fields that guide repair. But some organisms take this further. Salamanders use bioelectricity to regrow entire limbs, creating electrical blueprints that cells follow to reconstruct complex structures. Michael Levin at Tufts University discovered we can hijack these electrical patterns. By manipulating bioelectric fields, his team makes flatworms grow heads where tails should be, or multiple heads, or no heads at all. The genetic code remains unchanged, only the electrical patterns differ. Bioelectricity acts as a master control system, telling genes what structures to build. Applied to humans, bioelectric medicine achieves impossible healings. Electrical stimulation accelerates bone healing by 50%. Specific frequencies kill cancer cells while leaving healthy cells untouched. The body's electrical language, once decoded, allows us to reprogram healing in ways that make pharmaceutical approaches look crude. Ultrasound provides another gateway to impossible healing. Low-intensity pulsed ultrasound accelerates fracture healing, but the mechanism defies simple physics. The sound waves are too weak to generate significant heat or mechanical force. Yet bones heal 40% faster, cells somehow translating gentle vibrations into biological action. The frequencies matter in ways that suggest deep resonances between physics and physiology. 40 kHz enhances bone healing. 1 MHz promotes soft tissue repair. 10 MHz penetrates deep organs. The body responds to specific frequencies like a radio tuned to healing stations. Ancient sound healing, Tibetan bowls, Aboriginal didgeridoos, Sanskrit mantras, suddenly seems less primitive than prescient. Stem cell behaviors reveal perhaps the deepest mystery in healing. These cellular shapeshifters can become any type of cell. But how do they know what to become? Place a stem cell in the heart, and it becomes heart muscle. Place it in the brain, and it becomes a neuron. The Local environment somehow instructs cellular fate, but the communication method transcends known chemical signals. Even more mysterious, stem cells injected intravenously somehow know where to go. They migrate to sites of injury, crossing barriers and navigating tissues to arrive precisely where needed. No GPS guides them, no chemical trail is strong enough across such distances, yet they arrive with the accuracy of guided missiles, transforming into whatever cell type the injury requires. Consciousness-based healing pushes the boundaries even further. Dean Radin's experiments at the Institute of Noetic Sciences show that focused attention can influence random number generators, alter the behavior of photons, and even affect the past. Yes, experiments where future observations influence previously recorded data. If consciousness can reach across time to influence quantum events, what limits its influence on biological systems? Healers from various traditions, Reiki, therapeutic, touch, Qigong, consistently demonstrate measurable effects. Their patients show reduced inflammatory markers, accelerated wound healing, and improved immune function. Skeptics attribute this to placebo effects, but the healing works on unconscious patients, infants, and animals. Something passes between healer and patient that transcends suggestion. William Bengston's mice experiments at St. Joseph's College provide data that makes skeptics squirm. Mice with terminal cancer are treated by skeptical volunteers trained in a simple visualization technique. The mice recover completely. Control mice die on schedule. The experiment has been replicated dozens of times. Untrained skeptics following a basic protocol cure cancers that should be incurable. As we stand in operating rooms where fingers regrow, cardiac units where prayer prevents complications, and laboratories where intention influences DNA, we face a choice. We can dismiss these as anomalies, statistical flukes in medicine's grand narrative, or we can accept that healing operates by principles we're only beginning to glimpse. Today's impossible healings aren't exceptions to the rules. They're revelations of deeper rules we haven't yet articulated. They show that consciousness participates in healing, that biofields influence biology, that the body possesses regenerative capacities modern life has forgotten how to activate. These aren't miracles in the sense of breaking natural law. They're demonstrations of natural laws more elegant and interconnected than our textbooks imagine. The child whose finger regrows, the monk who generates impossible heat, the cancer patient whose tumors vanish. They're not defying reality. They're revealing what reality has always been capable of when we align with its deeper currents. As we prepare to explore tomorrow's healing possibilities, remember that today's impossibilities are tomorrow's standard treatments. The impossible healings happening right now in hospitals and laboratories worldwide aren't endpoints but doorways, showing us that the limits we've accepted are more cultural than biological, more conceptual than real. The future of healing lies not in conquering the body's mysteries but in partnering with them, not in eliminating the impossible but in understanding why the impossible keeps happening. For in these impossible healings, we glimpse not just medical anomalies, but the true nature of life itself. Endlessly creative, mysteriously responsive, and capable of recoveries that humble our greatest knowledge with their simple existence. In a laboratory at Tufts University, something impossible is happening. A freshwater flatworm, no bigger than a grain of rice, has been decapitated. In nature, it would simply regrow its head. Remarkable enough. But Michael Levin has done something that rewrites the rules of biology. By altering nothing but the electrical patterns in the worm's body, he's made it grow a head that belongs to an entirely different species. The genes haven't changed, the proteins remain the same. Only the bioelectric pattern differs, yet this is enough to build structures from a genetic blueprint that was never activated. The implications cascade into vertigo. If electrical patterns can override genetic instructions, if bioelectric fields can make bodies build parts they were never programmed to create, then what we call our biological limits might be nothing more than electrical habits we haven't learned to change. Welcome to tomorrow's healing, where the miracles we're awakening make today's impossibilities look quaint. CRISPR gene editing has captured headlines as the tool that will cure genetic diseases. The ability to cut and paste DNA with molecular scissors promises to fix errors in our genetic code like correcting typos in a document. But here's what the headlines miss. We can edit genes perfectly, yet have no idea what will happen next. The same genetic edit that cures sickle cell anemia in one person triggers unexpected cascades in another. The genome isn't a simple instruction manual, but a jazz improvisation where every note influences every other. Jennifer Doudna, who helped discover CRISPR, describes her technology with both excitement and trepidation. We can rewrite the book of life, but we're still learning the language. Genes we thought were junk turn out to orchestrate healing. Genes we thought caused disease turn out to prevent other conditions. The more precisely we can edit, the more we realize the genome is less machine code and more poetry, where meaning emerges from interaction rather than instruction. But genetics is just the opening act. In laboratories worldwide, scientists are creating organisms that shouldn't exist, xenobots. These living robots, assembled from frog cells, heal themselves when cut, work together without programming, and reproduce in ways their creators never intended. They're not engineered in any traditional sense. Scientists simply provide the cellular raw materials and basic shapes. The cells organize themselves into functional beings that swim, collect particles, and even exhibit primitive learning. Josh Bongard, who leads the Xenobot project at the University of Vermont, describes watching these creatures with something approaching awe. They solve problems no one programmed them to solve. They develop behaviors that emerge from cellular cooperation rather than genetic instruction. They demonstrate that life's creativity operates at levels we're only beginning to perceive. The xenobots heal when damaged, but not like machines replacing parts. They reconfigure their entire structure, finding new ways to function with whatever cells remain. Cut a xenobot in half, and you don't get a damaged robot. You get two smaller robots, each fully functional. They demonstrate that healing isn't just repair but creative adaptation, not just fixing what's broken, but reimagining what's possible. This principle scales up in ways that make science fiction obsolete. 3D bioprinting now creates living tissues layer by layer, spraying cells like ink to build organs. But the printed organs don't just replicate natural ones. Sometimes they improve on them. Bioprinted skin grafts integrate better than natural grafts. Printed heart valves last longer than transplanted ones. The artificial becomes more natural than nature. The real mystery isn't how we print organs, but what happens after. The printed cells somehow know to connect into functional networks, to establish blood flow, to integrate with surrounding tissue. No blueprint guides this self-organization. The cells communicate through channels we can observe but not fully understand, creating structures more complex than anything we designed. Anthony Atala at Wake Forest has printed bladders, ears, and even miniature hearts. But he describes the strangest part. Printed organs sometimes develop capabilities. The original organs lacked. A printed liver might show enhanced detoxification. A printed kidney might filter more efficiently. It's as if the printing process frees organs from evolutionary constraints, allowing them to express potentials that natural development suppresses. Tesla predicted that medicine's future would be frequency-based, and tomorrow is proving him right. Royal Rife's controversial work from the 1930s, using specific frequencies to destroy pathogens, is being vindicated by modern research. Cancer cells shatter at specific frequencies, while healthy cells remain untouched. The mechanism isn't mechanical vibration, but resonance at the quantum level, where frequency becomes information that cells interpret as instructions. Novocure's Optune device, approved by the FDA for brain cancer, generates electrical fields that disrupt cancer cell division. Patients wear what looks like a swimming cap covered in electrodes, living normally while invisible fields interfere with tumor growth. It's not a cure, but it doubles survival time with no side effects. The cancer cells simply can't divide properly in the presence of specific alternating electric fields. But frequency medicine goes beyond destruction. James Oshman documents how different frequencies promote different types of healing. 2 Hz encourages nerve regeneration. 7 Hz stimulates bone growth. 10 Hz reduces inflammation. The body responds to electromagnetic frequencies like a symphony responding to a conductor's tempo. Ancient practices, sound baths, chanting, drumming, suddenly reveal themselves as sophisticated frequency medicine that predated our understanding of the physics. The merger of ancient wisdom and quantum science creates tomorrow's most intriguing possibilities. Meditation apps now use EEG feedback to guide users into healing brainwave states. Virtual reality treatments for PTSD combine shamanic journey techniques with neurofeedback. Acupuncture points are being mapped with fMRI, while artificial intelligence analyzes which point combinations optimize treatment for individual patients. But the deepest integration comes from understanding consciousness itself as a healing force. The Global Consciousness Project, running since 1998, shows that human consciousness creates field effects detectable by quantum random number generators. Major events, disasters, celebrations, shared focused attention create statistical anomalies in random systems worldwide. If global consciousness can influence quantum randomness, what happens when we focus that consciousness on healing? Tomorrow's healing rooms might look nothing like today's hospitals. Imagine treatment centers where bioelectric fields are mapped and adjusted like orchestras being tuned, where consciousness training is as fundamental as medication, where printed organs are grown in fields optimized for coherence, where frequency generators play the precise electromagnetic symphonies that encourage cellular repair. Artificial intelligence accelerates these possibilities exponentially. AI systems now predict which cancer patients will respond to immunotherapy with 90% accuracy, reading patterns in genetic data that no human could perceive. But the AI's reasoning often remains opaque. It identifies healing patterns in data oceans too vast for human comprehension, making accurate predictions based on correlations we can't understand. This raises profound questions. If AI can predict healing outcomes better than human doctors but can't explain why, do we trust it? If machine learning identifies effective treatments through patterns we can't perceive, is medicine becoming more empirical or more mystical? The algorithms work, but their working returns us to ancient empiricism, trusting results we can't fully explain. The microbiome revolution promises personalized healing ecosystems. Companies now sequence your gut bacteria and design custom probiotics. But tomorrow's vision goes further, engineering bacterial communities that produce missing neurotransmitters, that neutralize toxins, that even synthesize medications inside your body. Your microbiome becomes a living pharmacy, responsive to your needs in real time. Craig Venter, who sequenced the human genome, now engineers synthetic organisms. His team creates bacteria with entirely artificial genomes, organisms that never existed in nature. These synthetic life forms could be programmed as healing partners, bacteria that patrol for cancer cells, that repair genetic damage, that produce insulin in diabetics. We're not just taking medicine, we're becoming ecosystems where healing is continuously generated by our microbial partners. But perhaps the most revolutionary tomorrow involves regeneration. The pathways that let salamanders regrow limbs exist in human DNA. We've simply turned them off. Lin28A, a gene active in embryos but silent in adults, triggers regenerative capacity when reactivated. Mice engineered to express Lin2A to heal without scarring, regrow cartilage, and even regenerate portions of amputated toes. The implications stagger. We're not evolutionary dead ends in regeneration. We're regenerators who've forgotten how. Tomorrow's medicine might not just heal injuries but reverse them entirely. Lost limbs regrown, severed spinal cords reconnected, hearts regenerating after heart attacks. The impossible becomes possible when we remember capabilities written in our genes but silenced by evolutionary choices we can now override. Nanotechnology adds another dimension to tomorrow's healing. Imagine microscopic robots swimming through your bloodstream, smaller than red blood cells, powered by glucose, communicating through biological Wi-Fi. They detect cancer cells by their chemical signatures and destroy them individually. They repair DNA damage before it accumulates. They clear arterial plaques, dissolve blood clots, and even reverse cellular aging. Robert Freitas designs medical nanobots with capabilities that sound like magic. His respirocytes, artificial red blood cells, carry 200 times more oxygen than natural cells. A transfusion of respirocytes would let you hold your breath for hours or sprint for miles without tiring. His clotocytes stop bleeding in seconds. His microbivores destroy pathogens more efficiently than any antibiotic. These aren't fantasies but engineered designs waiting for manufacturing capability to catch up. The physics works, the biology is sound. We simply haven't built factories small enough to construct machines measured in nanometers. But those factories are coming, and with them, medicine transforms from treating disease to enhancing capability, from healing damage to preventing it entirely. Consciousness research promises the most profound transformation. Studies show that psychedelics, psilocybin, MDMA, ayahuasca, create windows of neuroplasticity where decades-old trauma patterns dissolve. Veterans with treatment-resistant PTSD find relief in hours. Depression that survived every pharmaceutical lifts after a single guided session. The medicines work not by numbing but by expanding, allowing consciousness to rewire neural patterns frozen in pathology. But here's the revolutionary insight. The psychedelics aren't doing the healing. They're revealing the brain's capacity to heal itself when freed from its ordinary constraints. Tomorrow's psychiatric medicine might abandon the chemical sledgehammer approach for precision keys that unlock the brain's own healing capacities. Mental illness transforms from chronic condition to temporary pattern, dissolvable when consciousness gains the flexibility to reorganize itself. As we stand at tomorrow's threshold, we see not just new technologies but new understandings of what healing means. It's not just repairing damage but optimizing potential, not just treating disease but enhancing capability, not just prolonging life but expanding what life can become. The child whose severed finger regrows with pig bladder powder glimpses tomorrow's normal. The monk who controls body temperature with thought demonstrates capacities we all possess. The cancer patient whose tumors vanish reveals healing potentials waiting for activation. Tomorrow's miracles aren't breaking natural law. They're revealing laws more elegant and powerful than we dared imagine. We're awakening to healing possibilities that transform human potential itself. Regeneration, consciousness-directed biology, engineered cellular partners, frequency medicine, bioelectric reprogramming. These aren't separate advances but facets of a deeper understanding. Life isn't mechanical but creative. Healing isn't repairing machines but conducting symphonies. The body isn't fixed in its limitations but fluid in its possibilities. Tomorrow's healing asks not what's wrong with you but what's possible for you. Not how to fix what's broken but how to unleash what's dormant. Not how to fight disease but how to amplify vitality until disease becomes impossible. We're not just curing illness. We're discovering what humanity can become when freed from assumptions about biological limits. The miracles awakening in tomorrow's medicine aren't violations of nature, but revelations of nature's true generosity. And perhaps that's the deepest healing of all, discovering that the universe conspires not toward entropy and death, but toward ever greater complexity, consciousness, and creative possibility. Tomorrow's medicine doesn't fight nature, but partners with it, revealing that healing is not an intervention, but a collaboration with life's deepest currents. In a cancer ward in Seattle, something remarkable happens every day. Not the treatments, though those are sophisticated. Not the technology, though that's cutting edge. The remarkable thing is simpler and more profound. Some patients know they're going to heal before any test confirms. They describe a shift, a knowing that arrives like dawn breaking. Their tumors haven't shrunk yet. Their blood work hasn't changed. But something fundamental has transformed, and their bodies follow where consciousness leads. Dr. Rachel Naomi Remen, who has counseled thousands of cancer patients, describes this phenomenon with the precision of a scientist and the wonder of a mystic. The patients who heal against odds aren't necessarily the ones with the best prognoses or the most aggressive treatment. They're the ones who find meaning in mystery, who discover in their illness not just a battle to win but a transformation to undergo. This is the paradox that haunts modern medicine. The very mystery we try to eliminate might be essential to healing itself. Consider what happens when we remove mystery from medicine. A patient receives a terminal diagnosis with statistical precision. 6 months to live, the doctor says, based on median survival data. Some patients accept this prediction like a judicial sentence. They organize their affairs, say their goodbyes, and die on schedule, almost to the day. The prediction becomes prophecy through a mechanism more powerful than any medicine, belief crystallizing into biological reality. But others reject the certainty, not through denial but through engagement with possibility. They don't know if they'll heal, but they hold space for mystery, and in that space, impossible recoveries bloom. Their uncertainty isn't weakness but strength, creating room for outcomes that certainty would foreclose. Bernie Siegel, the Yale surgeon who pioneered mind-body medicine, documented hundreds of such cases. He calls them exceptional patients, not because they're special, but because they take exception to their prognoses. They participate in their healing with fierce curiosity about what's possible. They treat their illness as a mystery to explore rather than a fact to accept. The nocebo effect, placebo's dark twin, reveals how powerfully certainty can harm. Tell patients that a harmless injection will cause pain, and they feel pain. Inform them that a sugar pill causes nausea, and they vomit. In one documented case, a patient attempted suicide by overdosing on pills he believed were antidepressants. He arrived at the emergency room with dangerously low blood pressure, racing heart, and all the symptoms of a fatal overdose. Then doctors discovered the pills were placebos from a clinical trial. Within 15 minutes of learning this, his symptoms vanished. His body had been dying from certainty about something that wasn't true. If false certainty can kill, what can uncertainty heal? Children demonstrate the healing power of mystery most clearly. They haven't learned what's impossible, so their bodies don't know either. Pediatric oncologists report that children with the same cancers as adults often respond better to treatment. They heal faster from surgery, bounce back quicker from chemotherapy, and show higher rates of spontaneous remission. Is this just because young bodies are more resilient? Perhaps partly. They play with the mystery of their illness, creating stories where good cells battle bad ones, where medicine becomes magic potion, where healing is an adventure rather than a medical procedure. They inhabit possibility rather than probability, and their bodies respond to the story they're living. Dr. Carl Simonton pioneered visualization therapy for cancer patients, teaching them to imagine their immune systems as armies defeating invaders. Skeptics dismissed it as wishful thinking until brain scans showed that visualization activates the same neural networks as actual experience. Patients who visualized their immune systems attacking cancer showed increased natural killer cell activity. The mystery of imagination became the mechanism of healing. But here's the crucial insight. The visualizations that worked weren't always medically accurate. Patients imagined white blood cells as Pac-Men eating tumors, or visualized chemotherapy as golden light dissolving cancer. The biological inaccuracy didn't matter. What mattered was engaging with healing as a creative act rather than a passive process, as mystery to participate in rather than fact to endure. Traditional healing systems understand something modern medicine struggles to grasp. Healing requires room for the unknown. The shaman's journey into other worlds, the Chinese doctor feeling for subtle pulses, the homeopath prescribing remedies diluted beyond molecular presence. These practices create space for possibilities that certainty would eliminate. When anthropologist Claude Lévi-Strauss studied shamanic healing, he discovered something that challenged his scientific worldview. The shaman's explanations for illness, soul loss, spirit intrusion, cosmic imbalance were clearly mythological, yet their treatments worked, sometimes better than modern medicine. The mystery wasn't a bug but a feature, engaging aspects of healing that rational explanation couldn't reach. Consider the healing ceremonies of the Navajo, the sand paintings, the chants lasting days, the elaborate rituals. None of it makes biomedical sense. But patients emerge transformed, their conditions improved in ways that survive medical scrutiny. The ceremony doesn't just treat symptoms but relocates the patient in a meaningful universe where healing becomes possible. The mystery provides what certainty cannot: a container large enough to hold transformation. Modern research on hope reveals its biological power. Patients with high hope show different immune profiles than those without. Hope isn't just positive thinking. It's the capacity to imagine pathways to desired futures and the motivation to pursue them. But hope requires uncertainty. You can't hope for what's guaranteed or impossible, only for what's uncertain. Hope lives in the space between knowing and not knowing, where mystery makes multiple futures possible. Dr. Jerome Groopman of Harvard Medical School documented how hope affects healing at the cellular level. Hopeful patients show reduced inflammatory markers, better pain tolerance, and improved treatment response. But false hope, certainty disguised as optimism, doesn't work. True hope acknowledges uncertainty while maintaining agency, dancing with mystery rather than demanding guarantees. The placebo response itself might be better understood as the mystery response. It works best when patients don't know whether they're receiving real treatment. Once they learn they got the placebo, effects often diminish. But here's the fascinating part. Telling patients they're receiving a treatment that works through mind-body mechanisms maintains the benefit even when they know it's a placebo. The honesty about mystery preserves the healing power. Ted Kapchuk at Harvard runs open-label placebo trials where patients know they're taking sugar pills. He explains that placebos engage healing mechanisms we don't fully understand. Remarkably, informed placebos still work, sometimes as well as hidden ones. The mystery isn't in deception but in the unknown mechanisms connecting mind and body, ritual and recovery, meaning and medicine. Spontaneous remission represents mystery in its purest form. We can document it, study it, and catalogue it, but we can't predict or fully explain it. This hasn't stopped researchers from trying. The Institute of Noetic Sciences collected thousands of cases, looking for patterns. They found psychological factors, forgiveness, purpose-finding, spiritual experiences, but no formula. Each remission remained essentially mysterious, following patterns that dissolved upon too close examination. Perhaps that's precisely why spontaneous remissions happen. They require conditions that can't be formalized. Like quantum particles that behave differently when observed, healing processes might require unobserved spaces to unfold. The mystery isn't an obstacle to understanding, but a necessary condition for certain types of healing. Near-death experiences offer another window into healing's relationship with mystery. Patients who return from clinical death often report profound transformations. Not just psychological but physical. Chronic conditions vanish, addictions dissolve, lifelong patterns shift overnight. The mechanism remains utterly mysterious, but the effects are measurable and lasting. Dr. Bruce Grayson at the University of Virginia documents cases where near-death experiences triggered healing that no treatment had achieved. A woman with lupus returns from cardiac arrest to find her autoimmune markers normalizing. A man with severe depression emerges from near death free of symptoms that had resisted every intervention. The journey into ultimate mystery, death itself, somehow resets healing capacities. But we don't need to approach death to engage mystery's healing power. Meditation research shows that practices emphasizing not knowing, Zen's don't know mind, Christian contemplation's cloud of unknowing, create profound physiological changes. The meditators aren't seeking specific outcomes, but opening to mystery. In that opening, healing happens. Dr. John Kabat-Zinn's mindfulness-based stress reduction doesn't promise to cure anything. It teaches people to observe their experience with curiosity rather than certainty. Yet participants show reduced inflammation, improved immune function, and accelerated healing. The practice works not by providing answers, but by changing our relationship with questions, making friends with the mystery of our own experience. Even diagnosis itself can destroy or create mystery. A functional diagnosis, irritable bowel syndrome, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, often brings relief, even though it explains nothing. The naming creates a container for mystery that allows healing to begin. Conversely, a too specific diagnosis can foreclose possibility. You have 6 months to live becomes a spell that the body obeys, Dr. Larry Dossey proposes that prayer works because it engages what he calls non-local mind, consciousness that transcends individual boundaries. Prayer opens us to mystery, acknowledging forces beyond our control while maintaining agency through intention. Whether we call it God, universe, or quantum field, prayer places us in relationship with the unknown, where healing possibilities exceed our calculations. The future of medicine might require reconciling with mystery rather than conquering it. As we discover that consciousness affects quantum events, that biofields extend beyond bodies, that intention influences biological processes across space and time, we're not solving mysteries but deepening them. Each answer reveals 10 new questions. Each mechanism points to meta-mechanisms we can barely imagine. Perhaps healing requires mystery the way music requires silence, not as absence, but as the space where meaning emerges. The pauses between notes make melody possible. The unknowns between certainties make healing possible. Remove all mystery, and we might remove healing's most essential ingredient, the space for transformation that logic cannot map. This isn't an argument against science, but for a science humble enough to include mystery as data rather than dismissing it as noise. The patient who knows they'll heal before tests confirm it. The ritual that works through no known mechanism. The spontaneous remission that follows no pattern. These aren't failures of understanding, but invitations to expand understanding beyond mechanism to meaning, beyond probability to possibility. As we approach our final chapter, consider that healing's greatest mystery might be why mystery itself heals. Perhaps consciousness requires unknown territories to explore. Perhaps life itself depends on frontiers that recede as we advance. Perhaps the universe is structured to always exceed our grasp, ensuring that wonder, possibility, and the potential for transformation never disappear. The child who heals faster because she doesn't know she shouldn't. The shaman who cures through myths that aren't literally true. The patient who recovers by engaging uncertainty rather than accepting certainty. They all point to the same truth. Healing is creative act, not mechanical process. And creativity requires mystery the way fire requires air, the way growth requires space, the way life requires death to define it. In our rush to eliminate mystery from medicine, we might be eliminating medicine's most powerful ally. For in the space between knowing and unknowing, between certainty and possibility, between question and answer, healing happens. Not despite the mystery, but because of it. Picture, if you will, a single human cell. Within its membrane, 10,000 different types of proteins perform an intricate ballet. Enzymes catalyze reactions, receptors receive signals, transport proteins ferry cargo, DNA unwinds and rewinds 1,000 times per second. Mitochondria generate energy from food and oxygen. The endoplasmic reticulum manufactures new proteins, while the Golgi apparatus packages them for delivery. Ribosomes read genetic instructions and build molecular machines. Lysosomes digest waste while peroxisomes detoxify poisons. All of this happens in a space so small that 10,000 cells could fit on the head of a pin. The activity never stops. Even as you sleep, each of your 37 trillion cells performs this molecular symphony, coordinating with every other cell to keep you alive, to heal your wounds, to maintain the miracle of consciousness. Now, multiply that complexity by the number of cells in your body. Add the bacterial cells that outnumber your human cells. Include the viruses, the fungi, the vast ecosystem that you are. Consider that every second, millions of these cells die and are replaced, yet you remain you. The body you inhabit today shares few atoms with the body you had 7 years ago, yet continuity persists. This is the scale of the mystery we call healing. We've journeyed from ancient shamans to quantum biology, from prehistoric cave paintings to tomorrow's regenerative medicine. We've seen fingers regrow, cancers vanish, and consciousness reshape matter. We've watched mystery compound rather than resolve, each discovery revealing new depths of wonder. And now, at journey's end that's really another beginning, we can see the truth that's been emerging all along. The mystery of healing is the mystery of life itself. Think about what we've learned. The shamans who entered trance, states to retrieve lost souls, We're accessing the same consciousness-body connections that modern psychoneuroimmunology measures with million-dollar machines. The Chinese physicians mapping invisible meridians detected energy flows that bioelectromagnetic instruments now confirm. The healers who used sound, light, and intention to promote recovery understood principles that quantum biology is only beginning to articulate. But here's what takes my breath away. We haven't replaced ancient wisdom with modern knowledge. We've discovered that reality is large enough to contain both, that healing operates through channels both material and immaterial, that the poetry of traditional medicine and the precision of modern science are complementary languages describing the same infinite territory. The child whose severed finger regrew with pig bladder powder demonstrates that our bodies remember how to regenerate. We've simply forgotten how to ask them. The Tibetan monks who raise their body temperature through meditation show that the boundary between voluntary and involuntary is a cultural construction, not a biological law. The patients whose tumors vanish during spontaneous remission reveal that the body possesses healing capacities that transcend our therapeutic interventions. Each impossible healing points to the same truth. We are not machines to be repaired, but living mysteries to be engaged. The mechanistic model of medicine, for all its triumphs, captures only part of healing's reality. Yes, we are matter, but matter that somehow generates consciousness. Yes, we follow physical laws, but laws that include quantum effects where observation influences outcome. Yes, we can reduce healing to chemistry, but chemistry that responds to meaning, belief, and beauty. Dr. Rachel Naomi Remen tells of a patient who said, "I had thought that healing was about getting better. Now I understand that it's about becoming more whole." This wholeness transcends physical repair. It includes the meaning we make from illness, the connections we forge through vulnerability, the depths we discover in extremity. Sometimes healing means recovery. Sometimes it means transformation. Sometimes it means peaceful death. But always, always, it means engaging with the fundamental mystery of being alive. The future of healing lies not in choosing between ancient wisdom and modern technology, but in marrying them. Imagine hospitals where bioelectric fields are adjusted while patients undergo healing ceremonies, where AI analyzes your genome while shamans journey on your behalf, where printed organs are grown in coherent electromagnetic fields while recipients prepare through meditation, where the precision of CRISPR meets the wisdom of traditional herbalism, each informing the other. This isn't fantasy, but the direction we're already moving. Major medical centers now offer acupuncture, meditation, and energy healing alongside surgery and chemotherapy. Psychedelic therapy returns shamanic journeying to psychiatry. Bioelectromagnetic medicine validates ancient practices of healing through frequency and field. The integration isn't complete, but the walls between worlds are dissolving. Yet even as we integrate, new mysteries to emerge. Consciousness remains the hard problem. How does matter generate awareness? How does awareness influence matter? The measurement problem in quantum mechanics mirrors the mystery in healing. The observer and observed are entangled in ways that shatter our subject-object assumptions. Perhaps consciousness and healing are aspects of the same mystery, different faces of whatever force complexifies matter into life and life into awareness. Consider what we still don't understand. Why do some people heal and others don't, even with identical conditions and treatments? What determines whether a genetic predisposition manifests as disease or remains dormant? How does the mind translate meaning into molecular cascades? Why does love accelerate healing while isolation retards it? What is the life force that animates matter, that drives healing, that distinguishes the living from the dead? These aren't failures of knowledge, but horizons of possibility. Each question opens territories for exploration. Each mystery invites participation. We're not nearing the end of healing's story, but approaching new chapters we can barely imagine. The mother who kisses her child's wound activates healing pathways that all our technology can't replicate. The kiss doesn't sterilize or medicate, yet something passes between mother and child that promotes recovery. Call it love, call it biofield interaction, call it quantum entanglement between bonded hearts. The label matters less than the reality. consciousness and care influence biological processes through mechanisms that transcend material intervention. This brings us to perhaps the deepest insight. Healing is relational, not just the relationship between patient and practitioner, but the relationship between consciousness and body, individual and community, human and nature, known and unknown. Disease often represents broken relationships with ourselves, others, or the larger whole. Healing restores connection, reweaves the fabric of relationship that trauma, toxicity, or neglect has torn. The Aboriginal Australians speak of healing as restoring someone to their dreaming, their place in the web of relationships that constitute reality. The illness is not just in the body, but in the field of relationships that body inhabits. Healing must address all levels: physical, emotional, social, spiritual, ecological. This isn't primitive thinking, but sophisticated systems understanding that we're only beginning to appreciate. As we face climate change, pandemics, and the diseases of modernity, depression, anxiety, autoimmunity, cancer, we're discovering that healing requires more than individual intervention. The health of human bodies is inseparable from the health of the biosphere. The healing of persons is entangled with the healing of communities. The medicine of the future must be ecological, addressing the whole rather than just the parts. But even ecological thinking might be too small. If consciousness is fundamental rather than emergent, if mind and matter are complementary aspects of deeper unity, then healing engages forces that transcend even ecological boundaries. The prayers of strangers affecting surgical outcomes, the meditation of monks influencing random number generators, the global field effects of collective attention. These point toward non-local dimensions of healing that make the universe itself participant in every recovery. So where does this leave us? Not with answers, but with better questions. Not with certainty, but with wonder. Not with conclusions, but with invitations to participate more consciously in the endless dance of discovery that healing represents. Every wound that closes is a victory over entropy. Every illness overcome is creativity triumphing over chaos. Every healing, however small, is the universe demonstrating its bias toward complexity, consciousness, and care. We are not separate from this process, but expressions of it. Each of tell us a unique experiment in how matter becomes aware, how awareness heals matter, how healing generates new possibilities for both. The 10 trillion cellular repairs happening in your body right now aren't just mechanical processes, but creative acts. The white blood cells pursuing pathogens aren't just following chemical gradients, but participating in an ancient dance of self and other, integrity and invasion, death and renewal. The neurons firing as you contemplate these words aren't just conducting electricity, but weaving meaning from mystery, understanding from wonder. We end where we began, around a fire under stars, still asking why we heal. But now the question itself shimmers with new dimensions. We've seen that healing operates through multiple channels: material and energetic, local and non-local, conscious and unconscious. We've learned that mystery isn't healing's enemy but its ally, creating space for transformations that certainty would foreclose. We've discovered that the boundaries between healer and patient, mind and body, individual and cosmos, are more fluid than we imagined. The future holds keys to locks we haven't yet found. CRISPR will become crude compared to technologies that edit biology at the quantum level. Regeneration will extend from fingers to organs to perhaps entire bodies. Consciousness will be recognized as a fundamental force in healing rather than an embarrassing complication. Death itself might become not ending but transformation. As we learn to heal across dimensions we're only beginning to perceive. But whatever technologies emerge, however deep our understanding grows, healing will remain essentially mysterious. Not because we lack knowledge, but because life itself is creative, unpredictable, always exceeding our attempts to contain it. The mystery of healing is the mystery of existence. Why there is something rather than nothing. Why that something becomes aware. Why awareness seeks always to heal, to grow, to transcend its limitations. In this endless dance between known and unknown, between discovery and mystery, between healing and wholeness, we find not frustration but fulfillment. For what is life itself but the universe learning to heal? Healing the split between matter and mind, healing the illusion of separation, healing into ever greater wholeness that includes and transcends all previous states. You are part of this dance. Every time you recover from illness, you demonstrate life's irrepressible creativity. Every time you care for another's healing, you participate in the universe's bias toward connection. Every time you wonder at the mystery of healing, you open new possibilities for its expression. The story of healing will never be complete because life itself never stops creating new chapters. Each generation discovers new dimensions of the possible. Each healer brings unique gifts. Each patient's journey reveals unexplored territories. The mystery deepens rather than diminishes. Wonder grows rather than fades. Possibility expands rather than contracts. And so, we continue the dance, ancient as starlight, fresh as tomorrow's dawn. We are the universe healing itself, consciousness exploring its own depths, mystery celebrating its own endless creativity. In the end, the greatest healing might be discovering that we were never broken, only always in the process of becoming whole. The questions remain, the journey continues, the dance goes on, and the mystery of healing, far from being a problem to solve, reveals itself as the gift that keeps us forever young, forever curious, forever amazed at the simple, impossible, everyday miracle of being alive.